Patriot Come Lately show. This is Stefan, your Patriot Come Lately, the voice of the Second American Revolution. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever or wherever you are listening. As someone who came to America to escape from the socialist nightmare, I am using this show to shake America awake. Join me in the next hour for constitutional conservative news and views, as well as the occasional guest. We have to rebuild that shining city on the hill by taking this great country back to the principles set forth by the founders.
And good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever, whenever you may be listening to the show. This is Stefan, your Patriot Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice, just like the Founding Fathers, welcoming you to episode 271 of Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio. I'll start off by my usual greeting as well to the folks in the chat room. Paul and Rex are there as usual, so thanks for coming, guys. And if you're listening live by any chance, just mosey on over to the chat room, click on the little speech bubble in your Spreaker window there, and you can join in all the fun there. Paul and Rex often have very interesting back discussions, and I try and join in as much as possible, normally during commercial breaks and things like that. If you're not listening live, then just whip me off an email, stefan@patriotcomelately.us, or you can go to my website, www.patriotcomelately.us. Click on the contact form there, either email or the contact form. Love to hear from my listeners. And if you've got questions or comments, I'll try and answer them directly. On top of that, I'll also bring them up in a future show. So, anyway, folks, as I said, episode 271, and as advertised, I'm going to be talking about TPP, TPA, FTA. What are these all? It's the trade promotion, or as people are now calling it, Obama trade. Is it as bad as many people make out? Is it as good as others make out? Well, to steal a slogan from another network, I'm going to say I will report. I want to give you some information, and you can decide. As you know, try and do this show. One of its main things is to be educational. So I've gone and done some research for you. I'm going to bring forward some topics around TPP, TPA, etc., and leave you to draw the conclusions. I have some ideas of my own, and of course I will let my opinions be known. But everybody needs to think for themselves, and so have a listen to what's being brought forward and make your own decisions. And like to welcome to the chat room is Mary, who is a long-time listener, used to listen in the old Blog Talk Radio days, and now very glad to see coming back here on Spreaker.com. So hello, Mary. She was here a couple of weeks ago. Nice to see you again. And as I said, anybody else listening live, just jump in there and join the happy people in the chat room. Anyway, before we get to all these three-letter acronyms, sorry. Excuse me, got a bit of a cold, summer cold here, which is unfortunate. Before I get to Obama trade, first of all, I want to go back to our roots. As I say at the beginning, I'm British by birth, American by choice, like the Founding Fathers, and as the constitutionalist that I like to think I am, I hearken back to many of the things that they put together in the Declaration of Independence, and obviously the Constitution. which I think are marvelous documents, and I am not at all like the regressives who think this is an outmoded, useless document. I think it's actually both of them are very, very forward-thinking documents. But sometimes we lose sight of what they were really thinking. People say, well, you know, this, that, the other. But if you go to the Federalist Papers, that's one of the places where you can actually get a sense of what they were all about. And the other day I was reading Federalist number 10, so one of their papers, and in Federalist number 10 they were talking about how we should be electing our representatives, and it was they were talking about the balance of the size of a constituency for a representative. So in Federalist number 10 they said it must be confessed that in this, as in many other cases, there is a mean on both sides of which inconvenience will be found to lie. By enlarging too much the number of electors, you render the representatives too little acquainted with their local circumstances. That sounds familiar. And by reducing it too much, you render him unduly attached to these and too little fit to comprehend and pursue great and national objects. The federal constitution forms a happy combination in this respect, the great and aggregate interests being referred to in the national, the local and particular to the state legislators. In other words, here's something where we see, again, the 10th Amendment, where we see that basically only the national interests are supposed to be handled by the federal government. Of course, today that's very different because the regressives have really usurped the power, usurped the intention of the Constitution. But here you can see the people who thought it up being very clear that the great and aggregate interests being referred to the national level, and then local in particular very much to the state legislators. The other point of difference is the greater number of citizens and extent of territory which may be brought within the compass of republican than of democratic government. It is this circumstance principally which renders factious combinations to be less dreaded in the government. And what they're saying here is that by having a larger number of citizens and a larger area of the country which is incorporated into a republican rather than a democratic government, it's going to take the fact that you may have so you may have friction between different groupings of people, political parties or whatever, will have less effect in a Republican type government than in a democratic government. The smaller the society, the fewer probably will be the distinct parties and interests composing it. The fewer the distinct parties and interests, the more frequently will a majority be found of the same party, and the smaller the number of individuals composing a majority, and the smaller the compass within which they are placed, the more easily they will concert and execute their plans of oppression. Well, our two-party system is a very good example of what came out of that. And that's one of the reasons why our founding fathers were so against parties in government. They felt that this was not going to be beneficial to the people of the country. And we can see this now, right, with the regressives, with the, whatever you want to call them, the liberals, the Democrats, whatever you want to call them, being able to push through their interests, their ideology, because we just have a smaller number of individuals composing a majority and a smaller compass within which they are placed. Extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. you make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. Or, if such a common motive exists, it will be more difficult for all who feel it to discover their own strength and to act in unison with each other. Besides other impediments, it may be remarked that where there is a consciousness of unjust or dishonorable purposes, communication is always checked by distrust in proportion to the number whose concurrence is federalist. Difficult sentence there, but what they're basically saying is if people are aware of unjust or dishonorable purposes, the communication, so communicating that between the people will be checked by distrust in proportion to the number of people who agree with that particular unjust or dishonorable purposes. In other words, if a large group, if you have a large group, you see that some bad things are going on by a smaller group of people, communicate that, it's easier to stop them. Now, do we have that today? No, because we've got quite a way from what our founders intended. Now, the influence of factious leaders may kindle a flame within their particular states, but will be unable to spread a general conflagration through the other states. So here again, so you can have a small group will perhaps bring some bad things forward, but if you've got a large audience, a large population, it's difficult for it to spread. A religious sect may degenerate into a political faction in a part of the Confederacy, but the variety of sects dispersed over the entire face of it must secure the national councils against any danger from that source. Now, they, of course, were talking about Christian religious sects. I don't think they thought about any other religions taking over at that time, but you never know. I think the next sentence in this part of Federalist 10 really shows, though, that what is happening today is something that the Founding Fathers really would have hated, really did not want. Listen to this. A rage for paper money, for an abolition of debts, for an equal division of property, or for any other improper or wicked project will be less apt to pervade the whole body of the Union than a particular member of it. Now, there's a couple of things here. A rage for paper money, for an abolition of debts, for an equal division of property, or for any other improper or wicked project. Those words I saw, and they struck me. A rage for paper money. So that's fiat money, like we have today. The Founding Fathers didn't want that. For an abolition of debts. So in other words, getting rid of debts, but in order to get rid of them, you have to let them mount up. They didn't think that that was a good idea. What do we have today? We have the government with huge debts. We have a country where many people have high debts, and often, and then talking about abolition of debts, what about things like HARP and all these things? Because people have got into trouble with mortgages, etc., and what the government should do about that. The founders thought that would be bad. For an equal division of property. Well, let's talk about the regressives wanting to have distribution of wealth, redistribution of wealth, an equal division of property. In other words, the Founding Fathers saying that is a bad thing to do, because immediately after an equal division of property or for any other improper or wicked project. Folks, think about it. Redistribution of wealth is what people like Obama, people like Hillary Clinton, that's all they're talking about right now. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. More redistribution of wealth. It's wicked to have too much money. In other words, you have to have an equal division of property. Folks, these people are preaching an anti-American story. And the reason I say that is because I think the Founding Fathers are our founding American fathers, and they never intended this evil or improper, wicked project of redistribution of wealth. So, just wanted to bring that forward from Federalist 10. I would recommend everybody, do read the Federalist Papers. They're sometimes difficult to wade through, but there's lots of very interesting information in there. Okay, folks, it's time for a commercial, and during the commercial I'm going to try and get into the chat room. I know in the past couple of shows I've had some problems with the chat room. Looks as if it may have frozen up again, so again my apologies to Paul, Mary and Rex who are in there now. If I can't join you, I can't see what you're doing because I don't know what's going on. I've tried a different browser today, but we'll see. But I'm going to play the commercial and play around in the chat room coming up. So I'll be back. For everybody else, I'll be back in a minute or two.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And thanks for sticking with me through that break. For those of you that are listening live, it looks as if my chat room is not frozen today, so maybe using a different browser was the trick. Let's go on. I've got a new topic that I'd like to handle. And just to go back about a week, 10 days, you may remember that we discovered supposedly the Chinese probably had been hacking into our basically the HR department of the federal government and had been stealing information about people who work for the federal government. Now, social security numbers, names, addresses, stuff like that, which is bad. The fingers point in the direction of the Chinese. We haven't had any definitive proof given. But it turned out to be worse than it was originally painted. Well, of course, you know this regime. They're always going to lie about everything. So this, first of all, they said it was 4 million people. Now it seems probably all of the people that that work for the federal government, because they have one department, OPM, that's I think the Office of Personnel Management or something like that. The OPM looks after the information of everybody, pays their salaries and everything, so a lot of very sensitive data is stored on computers. And the OPM was not investing the money to actually set up the kind of cybersecurity that is needed today in these days. They were not prepared to make that investment. Of course, I'm sure they had all sorts of parties and visits to Las Vegas and conventions and meetings and this, that, and the other. Plenty of money for that, but no money for securing basically the information of their clients, because that's what people who work for the federal government are. They're the clients for OPM. But it gets worse. Not only is it most likely that everybody who worked for the government, or almost everybody, was involved and may have had their details stolen, but on top of that, OPM is also responsible for processing federal clearances, like top secret clearances. And for a top secret clearance, you have to fill out over 100-page document with all sorts of information, so they can check up and make sure that you're a trustworthy person. Now, you can imagine that sort of information is even more sensitive than just name, address, social security number, etc. Those files were also on the computers that were hacked. So who knows what kind of information has been purloined by whichever group did this, whether it is private people in China, whether it's the Chinese government, whether it's somewhere else, who knows. But really bad. Now, to top it all, one more lie from the regime. So we were told that the OPM discovered this in a routine audit. No, that is apparently not true. What happened is a private company was giving a demonstration to OPM of their cybersecurity software. Basically, I guess some kind of antivirus software specifically. And while they were doing this demo of the software, up pops a warning message saying, you've got some strange programs here which are doing strange stuff. And that led them to investigate further and find out that this hack had been happening. And based on some historical things, they could trace back that it had existed inside the OPM for at least a year. So this just shows you how dysfunctional our regime in Washington is. They can't even do things properly there. And we want the government to do more for us. It's like Obamacare. The government look after that. They're going to make a total mess of everything. And folks, another topic. Excuse me there. My next topic, I would ask the question, do Black Lives Matter? I mean, that's what we're told all the time, Black Lives Matter. Now remember, a week ago, there was a pool party in McKinney, Texas, and of course there were all these viral videos about this police officer that everybody said went wild because he was forcibly detaining a black teenage girl who was basically resisting orders that he gave her, and everybody was up in arms. And of course we have the other police things in Baltimore, right, in Ferguson, all these things, and then it's Black Lives Matter, we shouldn't. But that is all bogus, folks, because black lives don't matter. And I'm not saying that because from a point of view of I don't think black lives matter. I do think any life matters. But it's the liberals, the regressives, who are claiming that black lives matter, and yet they don't, because when blacks kill blacks, There is a stony, stony silence. Exactly. Crickets. Because near to me, where I now live, in Georgia, there was a pool party, and a young man, this was just a few days ago, was shot. A number of people were shot. One died, and four or five other people were injured. But there is no national outrage. There's no demonstrations. There's no Al Sharpton calling for something on MSNBC, because his killer was likely a fellow black person. And that's why I say black lives don't matter, because if a black person shoots another black person, the left doesn't care a hoot. Hypocritical as ever. So this happened in Fayette County, and a lot of things were very similar to McKinney. It was a pool party. There were about 200 other teens. Now, most pools, you get that many people there, unless it's a huge kind of water park or something. 200 kids in a pool is asking for trouble anyway. But this was in a home, and basically the party was being broken up by the homeowner, who came home and sort of said, hey, this is out of hand. There was a security guard there, but this pool party had been set up and distributed via social media. In other words, tweets saying, come on over here to this address, we got a pool party going, 200 kids. You could have known things were going to be going wrong. And the homeowner arrived just after midnight. He tried to break up the party. A fight broke out, and guns were fired. And as I said, a number of people, they say 15 gunshots. Well, 15, that's a lot of shots, because most guns, if it's a revolver, right, 6 or 7 shots. If it's an automatic, most small automatics that these thugs carry are 10 shots. That means either it was a larger magazine, 15 shots, or they had more than one magazine. They came prepared. I mean, this is just shocking. But why don't we hear about it in the news? That's the worst. That's the worst. And while we're talking about McKinney, a Dallas reporter did further investigation and found out that the pool party at which all this semi-riot occurred at the Craig Ranch subdivision, it was organized by a 20-year-old called Tatiana Rhodes and her mother, Lashana Burks. So they got separate surnames. Okay, well, we won't even go down that route, because otherwise I might be accused of being racist. Exactly. But anyway, they are going to be facing some very real possibility of civil lawsuits by the Homeowners Association within that subdivision, because they had an unapproved and unauthorized event that ended up costing the community thousands. Yes, that party that they were having, they had advertised a party, they'd arranged a DJ, they had a cookout, and on the invitations that they were distributing, also by social media, pictures, they said, and a pool party. But in order to do that, they have to seek permission to use the pool or the clubhouse area from the HOA. And neither Tatiana or her mother had sought that permission. They did not have that for this cookout event. And so obviously they were promoting it as a pool party, and the teenagers and young people there were expecting to go into the pool, and they basically were climbing over the fence and disrupting things, annoying the actual residents, etc. So this Tatiana and her mother actually organized these sort of parties as a profit-generating business. They did not sell tickets for this one. Let's set the record straight here, but they were using it to promote another party where they were selling tickets and collecting money, although there is some inference that they may never have organized that other party, and definitely won't do so now, so they pocketed a lot of money and don't have to do anything for it. So very interesting that. Okay, one last comment, and just looking in the chat room there, Mary was saying black cops should patrol black neighborhoods, and they can say anything they want, and if someone is killed, nobody cares. Exactly, because if black shoots black, nobody will care. But of course, no, don't forget, the regressives do not like the police. They want to get rid of the police, and therefore even black cops patrolling black neighborhoods. Unfortunately, Mary, that's not going to work. Okay, folks, I see it's time for the next commercial break, so stick with me. I will be back after these messages.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS that you can't pay? Call now for immediate help. At the Tax Relief Line, we help people just like you. If you take on the IRS alone, you could be facing levies, liens, even wage garnishments, personal or business tax issues. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, call now and see if you can pay less. They can freeze your bank accounts, even garnish your wages. Call the Tax Relief Line now for immediate help. Our expert team of tax professionals will negotiate your tax problem and deal with the IRS for you. If the IRS is threatening you with levies, wage garnishments, or seizing your assets, call now and see if you can pay the IRS less.
888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043.
This is Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, keeping the spirit of America alive, a proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network. And thanks for sticking with me through that break. I'm now going to spend the rest of the show talking about TPP, TPA, FTA, and all those other three-letter acronyms. I don't know what's up with me tonight. I guess it must be that cold. But before I do, we have to have one reminder, because this is going to come into play in when we talk about this TPA stuff.
And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government, or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism.
Yes, folks, good old Ronnie there, and just reminding us, of course, that we have to remind our friends in Washington, and I use friends very loosely there, that they are beholden to us and not the other way around. And unfortunately, while this TPA, TPP is being touted as some good things, there's also a lot of bad things involved with it. So, before I talk about it, let's start off. What exactly are we talking about? Because these things are being... we're talking about, different things a lot of the time, and I want to clear up the confusion. So let's start off at the beginning. The beginning is, what is TPA, what is TPP? Well, the thing that's currently up for discussion is TPA and TAA. TPA is not, as many people think, actually a trade agreement. It's the Trade Promotion Act. What it is a specific set of instructions that's being given to the president by the Congress. And I'm going to take kind of, let's say, first of all, the more positive view, and then tell you about some of the things I've discovered that are less positive about it. So TPA is something that many people have said, well, it's a giveaway to the president and cedes congressional authority from Congress. And this is actually coming from my congressman in Georgia. He had a town hall today, and I asked a question about this. My question wasn't handled, but someone else asked a very similar one, and that was handled. But this is from his website, and he said, it doesn't cede congressional authority from Congress. In fact, TPA empowers Congress to direct all future trade negotiations and is a primary way that Congress can enforce its will on the president. So, looking at a high level, you should say, yes, that sounds kind of good. Basically, my congressman explained, TPA tells the president what Congress requires him to put in any future trade agreement. So we're kind of giving him some restrictions to his negotiations. For example, protection for America's intellectual property rights, support for American labor and environmental standards, assurances that currency manipulators can no longer gain unfair trade advantages, and a commitment to tear down state-owned enterprises that unfairly compete with American businesses and workers. So these are a number of the things that they're saying, those who are advocates of this law are saying will do. And it sounds well and good. So, and there are also specific restrictions on some policy proposals, things that America would be tied to an unworkable and economically destructive climate change agreement, or policy that would open up America's borders to great immigration without congressional approval. So this is what they're telling us. Now, that may be in there, but then when you hear about other things, so the TPA may have that, but the TPP, which is the actual, this is the free trade area for the Asia Pacific that Obama so much wants to do, because he wants, as his legacy, to kind of leave something similar to the European Union, but now based between America and Asia. We'll see that some of these things that are supposedly in TPA are actually, or it's not supposed to occur through TPA. They're actually in TPP. So there's a dichotomy there. There's an issue. So TPA kind of supposedly sets out these rules for the president, because according to my congressman, the president, as the president of the United States, can actually go off and negotiate any kind of deal he wants, and it can be difficult for Congress to take that away. Well, what TPA does is basically say any agreement that you negotiate has to come back, be presented to the American people and Congress for at least 60 days, and then even then it's not going to be voted on immediately, so there's quite a long period before Congress has an up or down vote. So it all sounds good. We're setting restrictions on what the president can do, telling him what he can and cannot negotiate, and when he brings back an agreement, right, which is his right to negotiate, Congress will look at it, it will be published, the American people can react to it, they can tell their congressman, no, we don't like this, and Congress gets an up or down vote on it. Now, without TPA supposedly, and this is we've seen this with a couple of things where, for example, the president is negotiating with Iran, and he and Secretary of State John Kerry can sign anything they like. Now, we can say that we will not honor it as a country, but they can sign anything they want, including any provisions that the president wants, and he can send it to Congress without any input from the American people. So in some ways, this TPA seems like a useful thing. But we will get to it. Now, TPA, also called fast track, means that the president, like I said, is being given some instructions what to do, but then he can go off and do it. We're kind of telling him, go off and do it. And a lot of people on the Republican side, well, we want to do this. This is good because now the president can negotiate that. When we have a Republican president, it'll be easy for him to go off and get some good trade deals. Trade deals mean more jobs. Well, there are plenty of people who are saying, look at NAFTA, which cost us thousands of jobs. And these free trade deals aren't always as good as they seem, which is a whole other discussion. My congressman said to me, another misconception about TPA is that it allows the president to negotiate trade agreements in secret. And I sort of looked at that and he actually said, the TPA is going to foster transparency and openness. And yet there are all these stories, and I hate to say this, but my least favorite congressman who used to be if you like, the representative for my district when I lived in Florida, yes, Alan Disgrayson himself has actually brought a lot of this out because he is vehemently against this. So in that respect, I think I have to lean more to the Alan Grayson side than the Rob Woodall side. Rob Woodall says this is a good thing because it's going to bring jobs to America. I'm not sure. But the other thing that really troubles me is the fact that Rob Woodall is saying another misconception about TPA is it allows the president to negotiate trade agreements in secret. And yet, at this point, there is a lot of secrecy in this whole negotiation of the TPP, right? The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the trade agreement that will set up this free trade union around Asia, a lot of important countries, and very importantly, without China included in that at this point of time. Now, they're saying that this all has to be done in secrecy because it kind of preserves our negotiation position and keeps us in a position of strength. But Alan Disgrayson has mentioned that if you want to read the TPP, they are allowing Congress people and selected aides to go to a secret room in the basement of the Capitol where they can read it. They have to sign, though, a non-disclosure agreement, and they are threatened with being indicted for treason if they divulge any of it. And I sort of say, well, if there's that much secrecy around it, now I understand that you don't want to tip your hand while you're negotiating stuff, but if there's that much secrecy about it, something's rotten in the state of Denmark, as Shakespeare would say, or has said. You know, and how much do we trust this regime, right? About zero, I think, right now. So there's something to think about while we go to the next commercial break, and I'm going to pick up on that point when we get back, because now I'm going to list some of the bad things that I think are happening here. And overall, I think you're going to see, I think TPA, TPP, I'm not comfortable with it. Whether or not I'm vehemently against it, I don't know. But again, I'm just going to present the facts, and you know, I'll report. You guys decide. But very good point, Mary. Yes, why Sasika? I think that's one of the important things. And we'll see that come back after this break. So, folks, stick with me. I'll be right back.
If you're diabetic, this message could change your life. Is your blood sugar out of control even when you do all the right stuff? Are you afraid of diabetic blindness and the risk of amputation, as well as all those other side effects? Well, you should be. Is there anything that could help manage your blood sugar? Nobetes is a natural supplement that may quickly and dramatically lower your blood sugar.
My name is Bob Corder. I've been using Nobetes for about 3.5 to 4 months now. And in the first 3 months, I've actually lowered my blood sugars from 500s down to 139, and then it dropped to 88 to 93.
My name is Kirsten. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and while taking Nobetes, my blood sugar levels dropped from 295 to 115 in just 1 day.
The FDA hasn't evaluated these statements, and Nobetes isn't intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. But for many, it's helped drop their blood sugar. So if you've been evaluated with high blood sugar, don't delay. Evaluate Nobetes now. Call 800-424-3790 and get 2 bottles free. Just cover shipping and handling. Call 800-424-3790. That's 800-424-3790.
The offer of a franchise can only be made through delivery of a franchise disclosure document. Imagine yourself being a leader in America's fastest growing demographic category. More than 10,000 people a day turn 65, and a large percentage are going to need a helping hand at home or in choosing the right assisted living community. Always Best Care is looking for people who've excelled at everything they've done, but they're seeking a new challenge. Always Best Care is one of the fastest growing companies in this explosive field. We're looking for 25 new franchisees to keep our booming business growing. We'll back you up with the strongest award-winning marketing program in the industry, and we'll provide the special training and support that's fueled our growth to prepare you for this great opportunity. All that's missing is you. Call Always Best Care toll-free at 1-800-643-7508. That's 1-800-643-7508. For Always Best Care, 1-800-643-7508. Call today.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And folks, we're into the last segment of the show. We've been, this second half, we've been talking about TPP, TPA, right? So the TPA is basically the framework which will allow the president to negotiate the TPP and is supposed to shackle him. Well, apart from anything else, since when has King Barry felt the need to be shackled by anything that Congress comes up with? So they may put this thing in about the TPA requiring any negotiated deal to be published for 60 days and then discussed in Congress and given an up or down vote. Is King Barry really going to follow that? So the first concern that I have is that some of the things that have leaked out are that the TPP actually has wording in there that restricts some of the actual ability of Congress to do anything about this Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. For example, it specifies that it will only be an up or down vote, and I'm not sure whether it's TPA or TPP that has this wording, but it says that there will be an up or down vote. There will be no amendments possible, so the Congress will not be able to amend this agreement. And to a certain extent, I can understand it. You can't spend months negotiating and then come back to the people that you were negotiating with and say, well, I know we agreed this, this, and this, but my Congress told me that they don't like this, that and that's been changed. So to a certain extent, I think we have to be realistic and say, yeah, if you've negotiated something, it's either accept it or not. But not only are no amendments allowed, but it even restricts the amount of time that each congressman, each senator would get to debate this particular agreement when it comes to the floor for an up or down vote. And I think it's something like 90 seconds, which, given how long-winded most politicians are, is just a fraction of what they would need. So why do we need to put these restrictions on that? Is that maybe to stop filibustering, to stop, which I think it is, that's to stop people being able to block the vote on this thing if they don't agree with it and they think the majority might? I mean, you think about it, over those things, why do we have to cede that congressional thing? So that's one part of it that I already sort of say, well, that doesn't feel right to me. Then another question that's asked in some of the other places that I've been looking, who's going to benefit from TPP? They claim American workers, free trade, the ability to sell more abroad, the consumers, they'll be able to buy stuff cheaper, small businesses, taxpayers, or is it really the biggest multinational corporations in the world? Well, as I said, the TPP is now being shared with congressmen only in a very secret room and in a very limited way. But for the past couple of years, while TPP, the last 6 years actually, that Obama's been working, the regime's been working on the TPP, lobbyists from all over the globe and from large companies, over 500 lobbyists have been involved in providing input into the TPP. So our own Congress has very limited access to have input and to have any idea what's going on there. And yet big businesses are providing input. And one of the things that they've done is they've created something called the ISDS, the Investor State Dispute Settlement. And basically what that does is take disputes out of the American courts, but allows companies to sue countries if they feel that the country has passed a law which impacts their profits. So let's suppose that America passes a law to prevent some additive being put in food because we decide it is unhealthy. The company that makes that additive could take America to court. Well, to court, it's not even a court, but they could sue them for their apparent loss of profits. I mean, we're ceding our sovereignty here, folks. This is really bad, and I think this is something that probably need to handle a bit more next week as well, because we certainly need some of those details also to come out. So I'm going to dig up a bit more about that, because this is another area. And there's also paid information about immigration, etc. in the bill, and so much so that I'm going to defer that to next week because the clock has caught up on us. It is almost time for the end of the show. So let me remind you, folks, if you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy the show, tell your enemies. But let's get the message out, because we have to show that these big government Republicans and the regressives like Hillary, we don't want them to be able to push this kind of malarkey through.
And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people.
And that's the wrong one. What I need now is my ending thing. Folks, it's time to say TTFN. Great talking to you. Come back next week for more on TPP.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Patriot Come Lately Show. Please take what you have learned and share it with friends and family. Better still, tell them about the show so they can listen too. Remember to support the advertisers on the show. It helps keep this show on the air, and I thank you for that. I'm looking forward to joining you on the next show. Until then, keep spreading our message. Goodbye, and God bless America.